Final piece of intel, which will go on for quite a bit. And this next piece will send a shockwave around the world. Of that, there is no doubt. And it needs to be heard on all levels and for all people to get a grasp of it. And I mean all people. It will require many to expand their thinking and also get an understanding of their situation and ours as we the people also. I was contacted directly this week by people who I will reveal soon, although not the name of the source just yet for safety and operational purposes. And it revealed some startling information that has enormous potential to end the Mexican-style standoff our planet is currently undergoing. Now, first, I will give some background to it, as the information from my sources confirmed many suspicions of mine and also reaffirms many things that have been said in this show. So let's go back to the Illuminati 1 and 2 shows, also known as the Sfarli material. She was part of the elite programs as a trainer and responsible for delivering the program that all of the so-called bloodline families have to undergo, whereby they are tortured, drowned, brought back from the dead, poked, prodded like cattle, electrocuted, and electrotherapy are just some of the things they undergo from inside the womb to age 6. And it is often done or administered by at least one of their parents as well as the trainer. In those cases, it was the woman known as Sfarli. Now, I still struggle to get my head around females participating in that level of evil and torture. As the bearers of children, one would expect a more nurturing species, but that is clearly not the case. And the females have played a far larger role in the desecration of this planet than many, including myself at times, would like to accept. It is pure illusion. It's a man's world once you know the demographics of the top order. But these people, these are not trainers per se, but handlers, designed to smash all human-based traits out of them, like sympathy, empathy, compassion, and in many cases, love. And this is why most, if not all people from the bloodline families are cold-hearted, dismissive, and carry no responsibility for their own actions, no matter how wrong or heinous they do or act. Those children are then sent to Waldorf Steiner schools to further their brain entrainment. And a reminder of an excerpt from the Waldorf trainers, not teachers, is that the trainers are encouraged to be touchy-feely with the children and ask them not to inform their parents of what goes on in the school, creating the disconnect. And essentially these trainers in part become the new parents, or for the correct term, handlers. And we have two of these trainers in the alt media, although they have gone very quiet since I exposed them. Alana Freeland, sister of the Canadian politician of ill repute, and Cara St. Louis, which is a fake name, as the real name is Orendorff. And yes, it should be noted. Essentially, the children, have little to no humanity left, and they often seek out people who do and try to mimic their actions or behaviours. And people often wonder how they can be so cold and evil and have great difficulty grasping or comprehending that level of non-humanity. And we have spoken about it at length of how we can't judge the morals and behaviours of others by our own standards. But those shows, Illuminati 1 and 2, had major impacts on all of our members. So much so that I had to cancel part 2 for a later date to give our members a chance to grasp, accept the information, release and heal. There are some things many don't like to hear or see. Me also. And perhaps sometimes many members don't take that into account, the effect it has on the show hosts revealing much of the information within these shows. But this stuff has to come out into the light of day. You cannot provide a solution to fix a problem if you don't have the full or fuller picture of what the problem entails. It is the jigsaw puzzle analogy again. You cannot complete the jigsaw with only a small percentage of the pieces, like with the minions who followed Marduk. None of them had all the pieces of the puzzle or the pie. Not one of them was able to realise the full picture or what they were participating in. Kim and I, along with help from Shane the Ruiner, although his help has long since passed, managed to put all the pieces together of who was who, what was what, and where they all fitted into the control structure with a myriad of compartmentalization administered on all levels, the lowest form of which is the governments. Oh yes, you can carry on blaming the governments, but they're irrelevant. But the reason for doing those shows was the Illuminati 1 and 2. It shattered the illusion that somehow the elite lives are all so rosy, because it's not. And there is a hidden darkness that surrounds them also. There has been a lot of skullduggery done on this planet to all humans, elite or otherwise, including to other beings residing here as well. No one has missed out. All people and beings have been lied to and played, none more so than the so-called elites. And no matter how much they deny the truth, the reality of that fact will not go away. Like Shane and his programming, they were all told this was for their benefit because they are special, and also led to believe they are above the ordinary masses. Now, part of my background work before working for the Trust was to bring people and beings together. And the work done for a while with Shane, who is a Rothschild and a Draco. And that was for a while very beneficial for both species. Now, I have spoken privately to several bloodline family members to gauge their intentions in the hope we could find some commonality and bring some peace for this planet and many others. And that was largely curtailed during my work with the Trust, as the trustee wanted to impart control the narrative and who we engage with. Now, we have at least two members, of major bloodline families within our own group. So you see, it's not all of them that are the problem. But this week, a member of a leading bloodline family reached out to me, in part requesting my help, and they wanted me to relay this to Kim also, which will be done via this show. I have warned several times in these shows of not all is what it seems, and I am open-minded of where this information came from and prepared to engage it, and in the hope we can find a solution to the problems all of humanity now faces. This is why the trustee offered a third to the people, a third to the Rothschilds, and a third to the Black Sun, and predictably the top end of those groups declined it. Why? Because they couldn't control our third is why. Now, some of you will have heard me mention on recent Zoom calls of getting from point A to point B, which is freedom. And I stated if we did nothing in the next 20 years, the old program game will all be over regardless. So why did I come to that conclusion? Well, the reality is only the older members of the bloodline families are 100% behind the death, destruction and harvesting program. The middle-aged group is less interested than the elders, and the younger bloodline family members are decidedly against continuing the old program. And many of them wish to step out and away from that program. In 20 years' time, all of those of the older generation with reduced and somewhat corrupted adrenal chrome so they can no longer sustain their life longevity program, and all of them will be dead. And with it goes the programs by and large. Now that 20-year span can be reduced drastically if we get help from all levels of society coming together and providing a solution to the problems, and work goes on to drastically reduce that to varying degrees of success. Those problems now are not just endured by we the people, but the elites, psychopaths or otherwise. As a recent Black Sun leader confessed, only last month, when asked how he or they were going to fix the global problem they in part created, the answer back was stark and alarming in equal measure. We don't know how to fix it. It has gotten out of control. And this, in essence, is an example of watching it all play out, whereby the fear of the elites would escalate to a point and then seek help. And just maybe this call I received this week may be the straw that breaks the camel's back. Time will tell. But it is potentially the first sign of a crack in the elite world and those that are part of it. Where it all goes or leads to, who knows at this point. But we have to be open to debate and not suffer the almost closed shop dealing of the past year or so, where people on all sides refuse to listen. Our target of attacks on the system was not to convince the top order to quit, but to get their minions to see through their illusion and step down. The top order are complete psychopaths and cannot be turned. They will carry on regardless. And what is all playing out now was, as I warned back in 2015 or 16, and when I went against Shane's opinion on our show, that the infighting between the cabal was the cabal's way of trimming the fat, he said. My response was, not only would it trim the fat, but they would eat the lean as well. And all that will be left will be a relatively few psychopaths with little wealth, little assets, and no control, only the illusion of it. And essentially, we are real close to that prediction coming to fruition now. Not all elites are psychopaths, remember that. The ones that are and have been created that way. Now, with this call, the question will arise, can they be playing a game with us? Potentially. But the implications of this happening and is all coming together cannot be left to chance by being stubborn and non-flexible. Opportunities, when they come along, have to be seized and be given a chance. And if it all goes to shit, we're no better or worse than when we started. A case of nothing to lose and everything to gain. Now, some people will not trust their motives, and I get that. But many people support and trust Mr. Trump. And yet he was bailed out of bankruptcy by the same family at least 4 times to my knowledge. So what is the difference? Well, that difference is time. And time will always tell. So here is the gist of the conversation between myself and representatives of the Rothschilds clan this week. They claim, and I have some validation of this knowledge, although a slightly different interpretation of it, that for at least the past 70 years, the elder Rothschilds have been torturing the bulk of not only their family, but many others also. And perhaps all the bloodline families, including all royals, all Tsar family lines, and many of the upper echelons of society as well. They described a very old artifact that dates back many thousands of years old. That was potentially to be for benevolent purposes. And like everything else, when the Dark Forces gets its demonic hands, or in some cases claws on it, it was turned and used for malevolent purposes with the most far-reaching levels of pure evil in its darkest form. This artifact spans and traverses universes and operates in and out of the parallel universe to our own, and has the ability to take away the free will of almost anyone and make them do the most heinous things ever. They, under normal circumstances, would never have undertaken in any way, shape or form. It has been used extensively on the Rothschild's family members, many of which were unaware of what was taking place or what was going on, and was all perpetrated by the 3 leading Rothschild's clan members, one of which is not human. For those that don't know, the Rothschild's clan have the highest level of Draco DNA and blood than any other family on the planet. In other words, they are a form of reptilian. This machine is known as the Ark, which is a multiverse machine, and I will try and find out more details on this artifact, but I don't suspect they are speaking of the Ark of the Covenant. In fact, I know they're not. And to my knowledge, there are 7 Arks, and none of those are in the Dark Force's hands anymore, and so this artifact is different. Over the past 7 to 8 years, we have managed to acquire and remove many of the ancient artifacts declared to be myths, except the myths, for the most part, were real. Many of which were removed from the Draco group, and that has had a major effect of preventing further violence in many parts of the universe. One such artifact is the Star Maker Star Breaker staff, which has in part been referenced by the tribal peoples in Australia in their dealings in the past with the Draco. That object was acquired in the 2014-15 time period, around the time the bulk of that group left, and is housed safely and not accessible by them anymore. So the elder Rothschilds were stripping away the free will of their own family and forcing them to be and act like them. Those 3 need to be removed from this planet once and for all, and are returned to source. And I don't think those souls will be returning ever again. They are too corrupted and not redeemable. This machine has echoes and may well turn out to be a variant or the central hub for the Vril machines that were uncovered and partially removed last year. These machines underground were creating a frequency sound that interferes with the human brain like an MKUltra machine. The people I spoke to this week from the family were fairly distraught at what they have endured. Their free will taken away is one thing, but getting them to do the most heinous acts on their behalf is a whole different ballgame. And this is how they get around karma in many respects, as they then, like the modern Hebrew culture, have a day whereby they cast all their karma onto the people. And this is known as the Day of Atonement, and is replicated in Indian religions, Asian religions, spiritual practices, and the so-called Christian religions as well. All their dirty deeds are passed off in a ceremony onto the people. The Hebrew religion, of which all other religions derived from, and like the Zionists, are all connected to the Anunnaki group. Now the gist is, the Rothschilds family have got together and decided to disconnect 2 of the top 3 from the family altogether. But the 3rd is able to garner sympathy in some way due to his propensity to turn on the waterworks and gain him added time, where people feel sorry for him. Message to the over 400 out of the 700 Rothschilds who are now separating themselves, and any connections to their former clan is ditch the third one as well. You all know who and what he is, and you will have no peace with that entity around you. Learn how to shield yourselves. I've made those techniques available to the family member who approached me. Our members will testify that it does work if correctly applied. They also confirmed several of the reports that came out of our show and the named deaths or eliminations of certain individuals also. The top echelon of the Rothschilds continue to hail Marduk, and were not in favour of the new Draco Queen, who is the sister of Marduk. And they do not want to carry out the Earth restoration plan formulated by the Trust and the team, approved by the Council and also the World Government, who are a group of entities housed within the UK. Despite the Queen's attempts and successful engagements with her by myself and also Kim, they took action against the Queen with the support of Draco elements, and reports suggest that they not only killed her, but consumed her as well. A common practice by that group. My efforts to locate her since being informed to date have come up empty. The plans are for installing a new king for that group. Centres heavily around the person known as Shane the Ruiner. He was in line for the Satan role back in 2015, and that was prevented. Remember, that is a title and not a name. But the reports suggest he is or was part of the plot to remove the Queen, and he is in line to the Draco throne, which his cryptic comments inferred to me recently support that claim. Now, some will see this episode or meeting as engaging with the enemy, and some may see it as a plot to avoid the disclosures about their family, many of which we have covered in previous shows. And I do get that to a point, and I will be aware of any potential sidetracking. But with the knowledge I have at that level, I see it as a massive opportunity, one of which I have done earlier working with Shane, knowing full well who and what he is. An opportunity to build common goals and address the issues along the way, until ego, a common problem for that group, took over him, and possibly also coercion by his elders as well. But either way, both learned much from that engagement, and it was a step towards peace. As I have told you all, there's not one person or being on this planet who hasn't been heavily lied to, abused or duped on a massive scale. And we can carry on pointing fingers at each other, or build bridges and work towards peace and also a better and safer planet. Sometimes the enemy of my enemy can become our friend. Time will tell, and caution will be exercised. But the elite world is crumbling around them, as predicted. The reality is there are no enemies by name or fake titles, only by evil or divine, which is the same as light or dark. Most of the enemies on this planet are fake and created only for the divide and conquer program. And unlike others placed in important positions here, I'm not going to come at it from a warrior stance, ego, or completely inflexible. Going forward, all will have to be flexible and open to any and all possibilities of obtaining peace. And this is the time for it. I stated back in 2015-16, 2020 we would all see. And yes, the alt media people have seen much, but it's not just the alt media people. I said all would see. And maybe the younger generation of the so-called elites, all of which was falsely created to keep them occupied, are now starting to see through the illusions themselves. At some point, all species are going to have to learn to cohabitate in this and many other universes. This greed-based model of harvesting planets, beings and resources has to stop. It has resulted in countless wars and cost trillions of lives. For what? Nothing. To become fake gods, fake kings and queens, and have every material possessions at your expense of your own life force energy and a real life. Because those beings don't have a real life. They live in fear, and they're always looking over their shoulder, as the Queen of the Draco has already found out. But their real loss is the damage to the soul and spirit and their missing connection to Source. That does not have a price tag, and never will. And will always be the ultimate in richness. I'm hereby, on behalf of we the people, calling on the Council to take the fullest possible actions against those who killed the Queen and continue to plague this planet from their otherworld bases. Enough is enough. I and we kept warning you of continued off-world interference and humans running off-world programs, many of which are oblivious to. It's time for real actions, many of which I and we have requested of you, and quit protecting the lead members of that council and fix things once and for all. And as this planet is a nexus planet, it will fix many other places simultaneously. You fix the problems we can't deal with, and then give us the tools to start the full restoration of this planet, with hopefully many of the younger so-called elites in support of us, not against us. Evil is evil, and it has to be addressed with haste. One must never turn their back on evil, a lesson we have all paid very heavily for doing so.